Oh, okay, we're live. Welcome back. It's Modern Relics. I'm Angel. He's Lucky. We're back. You guys are excited. Some of you even texted me and said you were excited, so I know that I'm excited. I'm just not feeling too good. How are you doing, dude?
I'm doing great. We have fans.
We have fans.
That's awesome. That's
Both of them
fantastic.
are doing great, it seems.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's fantastic. No, I'm doing good. I've had a productive week. We had a Friday the 13th week at the shop, which is always.
I saw the promo for that. How'd you guys do?
Oh, we did really well. It was a hell run, though. As always, it's a marathon of endurance of trying to get through the lines of people. And
is the tattooing Friday the 13th like Black Friday is for retail places?
Absolutely. Yeah. But we do it 3 days in a row too, because I just got tired early on of people going, I couldn't make it. I had work.
Yeah.
Can you do it for me? Can I get the deal?
Will you do my wedding? Time? Usual.
Right. Stuff. Yeah. So, but I was like, let's just do it for the weekend. Let's do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so it's just become tradition for us to do it all 3 days. And I'm at the age now where it's super taxing.
Yeah.
But it was productive. It was great, but yeah, it wore us down, but we're doing good. Everything's cruising right along at home. Family's great. Wife's at the city council meeting. Might get rowdy tonight.
Yeah.
There's some protest group going on there to protest like globalist movements of our city council. And so they've been trying to put forth a rally. So it'll be interesting to see who shows up for that.
Yeah.
Some good players, some not so good players, mixed in with our good players. But I don't know. We'll see. Outside of that, I'm ready to rock and roll. We've had an exciting week, and you and I have discussed that we have tried to pull away from just making this a political show,
right?
Because it's not what we intended to do.
There's more to us than just that. But yeah, we're in the cycle of media where I don't think we're going to get out of prison on talking about this shit.
It's ridiculous. Like we're like, let's try to find some stories that are,
uplifting.
In the news, uplifting or just interest based, stuff that we're interested in.
I would love to talk about cars and guns, but
But no, people keep shooting at Trump, and we have to keep coming back to the news. So,
quick question on topic.
Yeah.
Where is our current president? Just
that is it. I don't have answers for you, man. I'm sorry. I lost track of him about a month and a half, 2 months ago. He's MIA, and
seems that way.
If I had any involvement in that, I apologize. But he is nowhere to be found.
It's brutal, isn't it?
He's nowhere to be found. He is literally on a beach somewhere, drinking Metamucil and taking long naps. And that's what he's doing.
It's hard to fathom, first of all, that the incumbent is like, we're fed the narrative of, he's fine. He just, is information overload. He studied too hard. It was over prepping for, the debate, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like we see a massive and observational cognitive drop off, followed by a passing of the torch by endorsing the VP for the next run. Like, I'm just out, which is kind of unprecedented. And then there's some grumblings about how pissed he was that now the DNC is backing her instead of him, and he's just going to party line it until he dies and just not say a goddamn thing. Well, 7 weeks apart, we've got 2 assassination attempts against former President Donald Trump, and there's just... I think he did increase after the first one the level of protection detail around Trump, like did Biden, but since then, nothing. We haven't seen him. He hasn't been active in his job.
We have 2 or 3 breastfeeding moms now instead of just 1.
Yeah,
is that the increase?
It blows my mind that you're just on the clock and not working for months.
Yeah,
it literally, and if we don't hear from him before the end of this, like, I'm frustrated. Like, where is Joe Biden? Where's President Joe Biden? I don't know.
He needs a beanie and a red and white striped shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to make children's books about where the
Yeah.
hell is our president.
Where is he?
It's insane. It's
Is he-
insane that
Is he holding an ice cream cone? Is he there behind the dock? Maybe he's on the Ferris wheel. Anyway, get into the story, please. Sorry to cut you off, but my whole thought initially this afternoon going into today's pod was, where the fuck is President Joe Biden in all this? Just as an American, I would love to hear from him. So
yeah, anything at all. I mean, really. So we've got. Do you have anything pulled up? Because I mean, this thing
I don't
is
have anything
crazy.
pulled up, but I have watched and consumed and read and heard stories and news breaks and updates and stuff. The one thing that puzzles me, if for those of you under a rock or haven't heard yet, Donald Trump elected one morning to break schedule and decide to go golfing with a buddy. He goes golfing, and there's a cluster of holes that are pretty close together, and it is typically where the media would gather to get a good shot with a camera of former President Trump for the media cycles and the paparazzi and whatever else. And I am not a government employee. I'm not a strategist for the United States military or CIA or intelligence community of any kind, and I could tell you that's likely where a would-be assassin would go. Just saying, if they wanted to take a shot at this guy. And you would imagine, since some kid also took a shot at this guy at a rally in front of a bunch of cops with no clear exit strategy at all, thinking either on one hand, I'm not going to get shot at in return fire, or two, I intend to die if I kill this man, because I'm most assuredly going to get killed with no escape route. Enter our next would-be assassin in exactly the spot I mentioned that he would probably be at if you look at the golf course that he was at. And yet and still the Secret Service are probably just not thinking things through. You know, I heard a clip about this. I think it was Piers Morgan and Andrew Bustamante, who was a CIA guy. And he said something that struck me as interesting, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories and salacious tinfoil hat stories boiling up about, you know, the who's behind the assassination attempts. And he said something that was comforting, even though it was grotesque in context. He said, you know, at the CIA, there's this razor line that we walk on intelligence and counterintelligence that may or may not be the truth. And like, how do we figure it out? He says, we always cut off the idea of a conspiracy theory where we can explain away the actions through pure incompetence. So
Yeah.
the Secret Service fucked up again, like pretty bad. How do I know that? And how did they not? You know what I mean? Like, that's my take on it. I don't have any stories pulled up on the latest, greatest, or I understand he went to court or is in court or something like that. And I know DeSantis had some shit to say about it, but like,
Yeah, he did.
come on, man. Like,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct in the in the probability factor of this being excessive amounts of retardation by our Secret Service.
gross incompetence. Yeah.
Gross incompetence. I mean,
Yeah.
it's beyond incompetence when it feels like a Benny Hill
Yeah. You're right.
music skit. Yeah.
Well put.
And so to me, it invalidates the idea of incompetence when you're now like we're working on a pattern, not just a couple of instances where it can be a coincidence. Now we're working on a pattern. If it happens one more time, then we know that it's not incompetence, that it's
I'm
actually being
I'm with you there.
planned.
If there's a third attempt on this man's life, and there needs to be,
And they're saying that there will be. Like I've heard a couple
there
of
needs to be
analysts saying
zero
that-
attempts on this man's life. If there's a third one, I'm all in on conspiracy at this point.
If it's not foiled beforehand, if it's not foiled before someone gets a shot off,
Right.
kind of thing, right? So this guy, Ryan Ralph, who's had an extreme history, like he straight up had been arrested for having weapons of mass destruction in the past. This guy has been a recruiter for the Ukraine war. He's been back and forth from Ukraine.
He has public
he's
statements about calling for Iran to kill President Trump.
Yes.
Yep.
So this guy is, I mean, we could go on and on about his background, but this guy was on the radar.
A
should
known
have been
player
on the
hater.
radar. Yeah, and they should have been tracking this guy from the get, unless they were and allowed this guy to do what he did. What really I thought was funny is, you know, the weapon that he chose to use was reported as an AK-47, but then what? Come to find out, it's actually an SKS.
Yeah, it was
which
like it was
is-
reported as an SKS by the theater that I heard it in, but yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which are similar platforms.
they're almost
but-
the same. Almost.
Right.
Yeah.
However, the shot that he was supposed to be taking was like between 300 and 500 yards away.
Mhm. Not the
And-
right tool for the job.
Not the right tool for the job. Anybody who knows those firearms knows that that's a close range kind of situation. I mean, you can do it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
but it's not ideal.
No,
That's
it
not the
isn't.
ideal weapon to do that. So was he that, like, if somebody who's recruiting for Ukraine and doing because the type of weapon kind of suggests that's where he got it from. Like, I have an AK that is from the Eastern European area, which is where they're generally from. You know, so like
Duh.
the fact that he chose that weapon
Yeah.
for this particular situation is bizarre to me, and I think there's probably more to it than what is being told. And
Yeah.
because it doesn't make any sense for him to use it outside of it being a statement piece.
I think it's a statement piece. Yeah, like
Yeah.
somebody who's literally written his own book about how to end the war in Ukraine. And
Well,
a
because
known,
it's not the platform. It's not the big bad platform
Right.
that everyone hates in the United States. It's not the AR-15, which is what every other situation that's happened in the last
Mhm.
5+ years is always. They've always handed whoever they want
Ye-
to be the patsy an AR-15 and go, here you go.
right. Yeah.
This is what we want to demonize. This one didn't even fit the bill for that. So
tools based on geography too, right? Like if
Yeah.
we grew up in Eastern Europe and we were allowed to have firearms, we were probably going to have access to SKSs and AK-47s, right? Those are believe still the service weapon, or at least the early service weapons of those geographies, versus the Armalite platform in North America, right? Which is what everyone's mostly familiar with here. I have eyebrow up. I'm not full tinfoil hat on this, in that, like I said with the first kid, the lack of planning and sophistication on, I'm just going to mill about at a rally until this thing starts, and then I'm going to climb up and probably just not think I'm going to get shot back at, or I expect to die in this, and this is my final statement, versus what we see with this guy in Florida, who had an obvious level of sophistication with an escape route planned. He had cameras on him. He had intent. He had premeditation in knowing that, hey, there's an outside chance Donald Trump could be here because he golfs here every weekend and he plays this order of holes and these successions. I'm going to camp out for however the fuck long he camped out for, hours, I'm told.
it was over 10 hours.
Yeah, like nearly an entire day, like working day of ability, planfulness. Okay, does that automatically make you an intelligence asset and this is an inside job? No, it doesn't. But is the sophistication level rising to the point where my eyebrows are raised at that being a possibility? Yeah, for sure.
Why wasn't the perimeter swept?
That's the
I mean,
incompetence part that Andrew Bustamante said, that I'm like, okay, that's a little reassuring. Maybe these guys are still absolute idiots when it comes to, if I could surveil that and pick a spot, how could they not?
I have zero training in this.
Yeah.
I have watched movies and read books, and I'm familiar with people who do have training with this, but personally I have zero training with it.
Yeah.
If a man of his stature, who is of his importance, but also that, has already had an attempt, the Secret Service has already messed up, the first thing I do is say, all right, we're going to check the perimeter, the outside line of his path.
Right.
I mean, even in Vegas, when I saw him come through that one time, like the perimeter was completely sealed off. There was no way anything was going to get through or anybody was going to pop off a shot. They
Mhm.
had that thing so planned, and for them to not, I mean, it's an open golf course. Like, and I just assume that's the first thing they did every time is go, all right, send the perimeter team out to go make sure no one's in the bushes. You
Right.
know, like, and yeah, oh, it's just insane
You,
that this is now number 2, and man,
you know what I learned about Nevada very recently is long story, maybe slightly longer. I've carried a concealed weapons license in every state I've lived in, and it's time to renew where I live now, and it's just been pushed down kick the can down the road for a while on the priorities list. So I finally get in there. It was bumped because my instructor had COVID when it was scheduled, so it finally lands last weekend, and I get through. And in this state, you're required to be in class for 8 hours, and then you have to qualify. And my qualification, by the way, was the best I've ever shot in my life. People were like, "Oh my god!" That like range officers were like, "Fuck, dude!" I was like, "Yes!" I felt like a king for like 5 minutes. It was like, "Yeah, range bros, high five!" I literally shot because you have to quali at 3, 7, and 12, I think, and at 3 yards. I mean, if you disobey the firing line and reach across it, you could probably punch the target at that. You know what I mean? Like, it's very close. So
Yeah.
I shot the bullseye out of the center. And manual of arms, I've never shot the 22 pistol they provide to qualify with. That's the one you have to qualify on. So then they were like, oh, okay. So then at 7, I shot the next inner ring completely out of the target. And then at 12, I shot the next inner ring completely out of the target. We're just like, God damn, dude. So I scored out of 300, which was phenomenal. But I learned
and the
an
beauty
interesting.
was this, you did it all from the hip too, which
Yeah,
is just remarkable.
One, I was shooting over my head. I had it all sideways and stuff.
Yeah.
No, it was fun because I think the funnest part is there was only 2 of us in this class, and the girl that was in the class with me, who I got to know throughout the day, pretty much were the only 2 students in the class. Had never shot guns before. Like, she's just jumping in full force, right? Sweetheart, but had no idea, no experience with guns, no knowledge of manual of arms, any of this. So she's looking at, gun like, wow, this looks scary. But I shot the first 2, and going into the 12-yard quali, she like looks at me and she mouths the words like, "Who the fuck are you?" I was like, I shoot every weekend. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and she going from calibers I'm consistently shooting with to a 22, it's like a BB gun to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's anyway, it felt great. But the statistic I learned in that class was that 1 in 8 Nevada residents are likely to be concealed carrying a weapon.
Whoa. That's incredible.
I was like, I don't know.
1 in 8?
1 in 8. They were like, oh, yeah. Because you can open carry without a permit at all down here, right? And you see that from time to time. There's folks that, like, in the grocery store or whatever, and it doesn't bother me. You see that where you live all the time.
All the time, yeah. I'm one of those people.
But 1 in 8, I was just like, Jesus.
That's mind blowing. Yeah.
I guess.
Wow.
I guess the
I would not
citizens
have
down here.
expected that.
Yeah, not fucking around. Anyway, it was a fun statistic. Sorry to sidetrack the show.
Not at all. Not at all.
So-
In fact, you brought me into kind of a move over here because there is a story actually that I thought was actually fairly interesting about Nevada as well.
Yeah.
And that story kind of correlates with what's going on with our current president,
Sure.
our current vice president, who is our Democrat running, and then our, and Trump. CBS drops devastating news.
Devastating.
Devastating news for Kamala in your state of Nevada.
Uh-oh.
They did some polling, and apparently we could only find one Harris supporter in every restaurant. And so they were polling around different restaurants in Diaz visited popular local Adriana Diaz was the reporter who did this.
Sure.
Hit the road in Nevada only to find a near non-existent base for support for Kamala Harris. Diaz visited popular local eateries in Reno, Nevada,
Mm-hmm.
North Las Vegas, and Nye County, Nevada, and describing her experience as eye-opening. Apparently, everybody that she ran into, outside of essentially maybe one person per restaurant, which was not every time. Just that was kind of her go-to average on it, like maybe one per restaurant, but the rest of them were all voting for Trump. All of them. These were random people in restaurants in 3 major areas of Nevada.
Yep.
That to me, especially in a swing state such as Nevada, which they're really kind of leaning into this election. It was last election, but this one seems to be even more pivotal for you guys. Apparently, it has a lot to do with how the Trump administration has said that they're going to not tax tips,
Mm-hmm.
and that the economy, I mean, they're living in a tourist state. Like, regardless of what part of Nevada, you don't go to Nevada unless you're a tourist.
Yep.
Or you're living there. That's their primary.
Or you love the high country and the cold.
Right.
2 things.
But
First of all, Cynthiana Faster, hello, welcome back. We love seeing you here. Second thing, yeah, it has to do with the tips. This is almost exclusively an area that is hospitality based as far as the principal job market. Imagine that. And secondly, we're not too far away from Mexico, and the border thing is a thing.
Yeah, it is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And people are recognizing it and seeing it in their backyards.
Yep.
And and they're going, why isn't this being reported on the news? I'm seeing it in person, And so it's being denied by the administration. It's being denied, publicly within the sphere of the media, that this isn't going on, and they're seeing it with their own eyes.
Yeah, and lots of folks that are from countries not named Mexico, by the way. Just coming in over the Mexico border all the time. In fact, I watched I think it was dropped yesterday or the day before, but Sean Ryan show, he did a pod with Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay.
And it was great. And she talked quite a bit about the border on that. I encourage people to check that out if you're interested. So, but yeah, those are 2 big issues. And I think people in Nevada are tired of it. Now, I live in a bit of a pocket where almost everyone around me is tired of it. But when you venture more and more into the city, like a lot of, especially people like I meet at car shows and stuff they don't beat around the bush, because the fun part about like Gen X and millennials and stuff, there's still kind of an ethos in conversation that don't bring up politics right off the bat. There's this, that, and the other thing. There's a sensible way to approach a conversation with a stranger that doesn't involve that. Not Gen Z. It's like, nope. They're just like, fuck that, I'm voting for Donald Trump. Really? I didn't expect that. How come? I can't afford rent. Okay. Yeah,
and that's every conversation that I had the last couple of times I've been down there and working in the tattoo shops. First of all, 85+% of the shop owners I talk to are all on the same page about that. Yeah. But all of the people that I tattooed, almost all of them were of Hispanic descent, and all of them were in between 18 and 25. And every one of them were very quick. Like, I wasn't going to bring up politics in a shop that I don't own.
100%. That's the generation we're from. We kind of don't just talk about politics with strangers like that. Yeah.
Yeah. They brought it up, and they're all Trump supporters. All of them. I didn't meet a single one that wasn't. It was wild. I was like, this is crazy. But then, like, driving, when we went down to visit you back in June, we were blown away at Henderson and the amount of Trump support that was in Henderson. It's everywhere. And that was only eclipsed by when we went down to Lake Havasu. Lake Havasu was one giant Trump flag. It was bizarre.
Right.
Like, we're like, wow, we did not expect this when we were driving through this part of the country. And it was pretty incredible.
Arizona, also literally a border state. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the tides are changing, and one of the other things, and it's a bit of a developing trend that I saw 3 different articles on, was there's a lot of Taylor Swift fans that have like Swifties for Trump now, and they're like, it's okay to love Taylor Swift and have your own political opinion and stuff. Like young, like 18, 19, 20-year-old girls that are just head over heels for the whole Swiftie mania thing, but are also like have their own homemade shirts that say like Swifties for Trump and shit. It's just like, okay, well that blows my mind. Maybe there is a bit of a movement here.
Well, there's a girl on Timcast. She's one of the writers for Scanner News, and she's
Okay.
on Timcast, like Tim Pool.
Sure.
She's on almost every night. She's one of the co-hosts.
Is he doing a nightly
And her
show?
name's- Yeah, he does a nightly show. Yeah,
it.
he's got. I can't remember who he has on tonight. Oh, Andrew from the Crucible.
Uh-huh.
But she's on almost every night, and although I find her a little shrill and annoying, she's a fairly smart girl, and she's a reporter, and she's actually very, very smart lady. But she is a profound Swiftie. Like she can't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
She's right in that demographic. She is a early 20s, blonde, thin, kind of just the demographic that the Swiftie nation caters to. She loves, and she will defend Taylor Swift in every regard, no matter what she says, no matter what she does. However, she's highly conservative and like I think even possibly Catholic, but like she's a conservative pundit that is such a Swiftie fan, but will overlook certain things and go, I love her anyway, but I'm voting for Trump. So she is kind of the demographic that these Swifties for Trump, they're out there. They do exist, and there's a lot of them. And I don't think that the momentum that they thought that they would get, because her music kind of speaks to middle America. There's a lot of like country, Ohio, Nebraska girls that love them some Taylor Swift, but they grew up on a farm and they are, working on their dads and their parents are still together, and they just have this kind of middle America kind of conservatism to them, but they just like Taylor Swift songs. They don't agree with her politically. All of the punk rock that I listened to.
Oh yeah, I was about to make that correlation. Yeah, all the bad religion, propaganda, fucking Rise Against,
all
like
every single bit of it. I was like, great music, terrible message. You guys don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, but that is possible. You don't have to politically align with your favorite music artists. And they're proving it. This is great. I think it's hilarious.
And here's what I think. However you land politically, you should defend that because it's what you want, not because your favorite celebrity tells you it's cool, or because you heard something on the news or from some popular streamer or musician. So I know they exist. It's just typical temperament of people that age in those places would lead you to believe they would want to go exactly the opposite. Move to the big city, full on progressive, totally rebel against all the classic tenets they were raised by, and then probably years later kind of maybe come back to it type of thing. But for me, I found it striking that it wasn't just 1 or 2 people. There was like a shit ton of people that were doing this Swifties for Trump thing, and I kind of was tickled by that. Like, that's hilarious. People aren't all camped in the same side at the same time. It's interesting.
Well, what's going to end up happening is she's going to probably make some snide off comment about like, well, if you're voting for Trump, I don't care if you're my fans anyway, because she has Taylor Swift money,
over $1 billion in net worth. Yeah.
She can give the middle finger to part of her fan base, right? Yeah. But what's going to end up happening is they're going to laugh at her and go, we don't care. We don't care if you hate us or not. That's not the point.
Right.
And it was the same thing like with when, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Lauryn Hill actually made a statement saying, I would rather my children starve to death than one more white person buy my album.
I remember that.
To which I bought 3 cents at that, right after that, because I was like, I don't care what you say. Your album's awesome. It's a beautiful album. And I loved that. I loved it. but I don't take that stuff seriously. You're a celebrity. You make music. You make entertainment. You do not have the bandwidth to be able to for me to take you seriously when it comes to uh, content of character or of great, political importance. I
Mhm.
just don't see you as that. I see you as somebody who makes songs,
Mhm.
and that's who you are. I don't care about any of your other opinions.
Yeah,
So
and how could you
it-
not cater to a market when technically a reformed refugee is a Fuji? Maybe
right?
gaining
Yeah,
affluence and dollars, and I don't know. I'm workshopping
yeah.
that one, but thanks, Lauren Hill, for great music all those years ago, and hating
Yeah.
on white people in the process. I guess I don't know. That's
Yeah.
what I say about Dave Chappelle, though. It's like he's the funniest racist I know. Not personally know, but you know what I mean. Like he's still hilarious. I know he hates white people. But he's still hilarious.
It's still one of my favorite. I don't care,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is what it is. I'm not
Uh,
stumping for any of them. So
so it's
but
heating up, dude. It's heating up. It is heating
it
up
is.
to a tremendous degree. We said buckle up. I didn't expect all this. I didn't expect 2 assassination attempts. I didn't expect.
Oh, we still got 7 weeks to go.
I
Man.
know.
How many? How do we want to take bets as to how many we'll get before November?
Well,
How many people will?
I thought the most extreme shit we would see would be like a grip of executive orders of some kind, or some new novel virus that's spinning up that we need to have the most amount of fear porn we can consume. Like, I figured
Yeah.
certainly this will be the playbook that's used. I didn't expect all this. This is aggressive and egregious.
Well, nobody's eating the other stuff anymore. It's being shoveled, it
Yeah.
was shovel fed to everybody, and now everybody's onto a different diet, and they're not eating fear porn for
Yeah.
viruses. They're not eating that stuff, and
It's going to be
it's become
yesterday's
very
diet,
apparent.
like Atkins. Does anyone still do Atkins? Do you remember when that was a big deal?
Oh yeah,
There
oh
were
yeah.
books on it, and people were,
Yeah, the amount of
podcasting
book-
it, and
The amount of books I had to shelve at Borders back in the day
Yeah.
that were on AdKit, and so I was like, how many books do you have to write about one diet? It
dude,
doesn't make any sense, but.
yeah,
But yeah, I think we are in the thick of it. I think that we've got 7 weeks, and I don't think the escalation's going down. I think it's going to go up for 7 weeks to the point where you and I unilaterally made a decision. You've got other stuff going on, but I'm not going down to Vegas in October.
yeah,
At the end of October, due to the fact that I don't know what it's going to look like the week before the election, and I don't want to get stuck in an airport.
hmm
I don't want to get stuck, that far away from my family, and I'm going to play it safe, and I'm going to stick close to home
Yep.
at the end of October. That's the level of worried I am about what the next 7 weeks has for us, and it's remarkable that we as a nation have come to this level and that we've allowed it
yeah.
and that sometimes have even celebrated it depending on your viewpoint, and I can't be a part of that, but it is worrisome, and we got 7 weeks of in my opinion escalation. I don't
Well,
think it's going down.
I don't know if you have plans, but election night is a Tuesday, which is our usual broadcast night, which means we could probably do a special, maybe a long one.
I would love it.
Order some food, kick back, and see what unfolds. But I'm with you too. I don't know what to expect. I remember when in 2016 I was still going into the office over there at Redacted, and I show up, and there were people. It's just like if you're that emotionally unhinged about the result of the presidential election, maybe stay home. There were
Right.
literally weeping, like, kicking pine cones down the road. People were, just so overcome they were leaving in the middle of meetings and stuff. They just crying real hard. And that
Which was-
was comical. This level of escalation is unfathomable. And so I don't
Yeah.
blame you for staying home. don't
Yeah.
blame you for not wanting to fucking test the waters at an airport, you know, either just before or after this thing. And I don't know what's going to happen because it doesn't seem like there's a fucking off switch, you know, and the media continues to fuel these fires. So yeah, man, like to me, I kind of laughed like, even if it doesn't turn out your way, you got 4 to 8 years to try again next time. You know what I mean? And this time, I don't know what to expect. I'm out of ideas. My oh shit-o meter is the top has been blown off 6 weeks ago, and it hasn't come back down to earth since then, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I don't know how a country can stay at red line for as long as we're redlining.
Doesn't it
before the
feels
motor-
like it though,
before
doesn't
the
it?
Motor blows. Yeah, we're redlining constantly, and the RPMs are at max, and we are like I said, like we said at the beginning, we tried to find stories that weren't involved with our country imploding, and
and we will,
and-
just not now.
right, not now. So it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be interesting, and you know, bringing it back to the 2016 election and the weepers and the criers. From what I recall, because I remember, you know, people didn't hate Trump until he started running, and then all of a sudden it flipped because the media told him to flip. But I think half of the people at that point didn't have the TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome. I think half of them just really liked Hillary for abortion issues and all of the craziness, you know, and they were just sad that she lost because it was supposed to be such a monumental win, right?
Nobody had enough time to prepare to hate Donald Trump because the media was like, no shot he's going to win the primary. None.
Right.
Like, this is a joke.
It wasn't until 2 weeks after that they really cranked up the Donald Trump's the evil Nazi. He is Hitler reincarnated.
Yeah,
and then
but don't worry. All the Stormy Daniels stuff and the Nazi stuff and the salacious things he said, don't worry, because he's going to get his ass kicked by Hillary on election night. So stress less. Yeah, they didn't have time to have the vitriol and the level of divisiveness and escalation and pandemic and all the bullshit that's gone on since then to get to the point where we're at now, where all bets are off to me, man. I'm just like, I don't know what to expect. I had a lot more faith in the American electorate and our citizens and constituents, but not now. Right now, I'm kind of like, I could see anything and probably not be shocked.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, and also, did you hear the first Fed rate cut is coming since the pandemic?
No, this is not something that has hit my radar, so you'll have to tell me about
Must be election season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this
how convenient.
Convenient. This is an article from investors.com, and they're talking about the stock market rally. And it's because a bunch of people are like, hey, you know, the key indexes pulled back to finish a little bit mixed at the close of yesterday as investors are turning a little cautious ahead of the Fed rate cut announcement. But this is how nuts it is. The Federal Reserve will release its official statement at 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday tomorrow, excuse me. The Fed is locked to cut rates for the first time since the COVID crisis, but markets have been split over whether the move will be 25 basis points or 50. Over the past few days, the odds have shifted toward a larger Fed rate cut with a 63% chance of it landing on that 50 basis points. A small Fed rate cut could disappoint markets and raise concerns that policymakers are behind the curve. Investors will also look for clues about the Fed rate cut lookout. Markets have been almost full priced in 100 basis points cuts by year end with a 59% chance of 125. Along the Fed meeting announcement, the central bank at 2 p.m. will release an updated dot plot indicating where individual policymakers think rates are headed, along with economic projections and a bunch of other stuff. So we will see tomorrow, but there's a pre-stock market rally starting off really strong today. Kind of faded off a little bit midday, closed pretty strong. But the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost a tiny fraction in the market trading, and the S&P went up. Both of them hit all-time highs in the morning, though. So what does this mean? It means that we're looking at cutting the rates right before we land a new president. It's going to bump things like crude oil prices, treasury notes. The S&P 500 index is likely to climb. And all of these will be talking points right at the ass end of a absolutely devastating term, economically speaking, with our incumbent that will be used as it'll be used as a talking point. Everything's on the rise. Just wait till we get our new job market index results and shit.
Give me 4 more years and we'll see this,
Yeah, you like what you're seeing until election day? Oh, it's just going to keep on climbing.
Why would you take out a woman president who's doing all these great things?
Right.
You know, she's distanced herself from all of the bad stuff that she's been a part of with this administration, but will take credit for all of the good stuff to launch her into a new administration with her at the head.
Yep.
It is diabolical.
This is politics in action right here.
And what's crappy about all of that is that your average low information voter will see that and not recognize the dastardly plot behind it and recognize that and be completely duped by it. And that's the point of it, is to basically sway the low information voters.
Yep.
And to be able to do that with falsified numbers, inflated numbers, because you pulled a sneaky one in at the last minute that is going to actually long-term hurt the economy and all and everything, the stock market and everything else, but short-term launch you into a new, a new administration.
And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because we're here and we're still drawing breath, and we can tell you a Fed rate cut is unilaterally awesome. Keep cutting that. That's awesome. That's great. We're creeping up on the holidays. They're just a heartbeat away. People would like to provide Christmas presents for their children. I would love to see inflation drop a little bit. Rate cuts are amazing, especially, for Q1 home buying. I don't care who's the sitting president. America needs that. So that's good.
Yeah.
Just don't be duped by the fact that this is because of policymakers driving these changes centered around anything other than this is the last-ditch Hail Mary effort to try and throw some vote baiting your way. Take it for what it is and enjoy the fact that we need it, but this is not the Biden-Harris camp's doing.
Not at all.
But it absolutely is a fun little twist in politics heading toward the final stretch there. So, recognize what the last 3.5 years look like and expect a lot more of that, driven by policies that they haven't been able to articulate, at least in debates so far. We didn't hear shit about what they were going to do, but recognize that's the same interested parties helping with those policy decisions for Biden that would be for Harris as well. And Obama. Yeah. Like, nobody changed, really. A few players have changed, but the central figures are still there. So, food for thought.
Yeah.
And then finally, I had a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine who's
I was curious about this.
Diehard listener of the show, and I want to say that I love and thank him for asking very thoughtful questions, because he always tries to figure out how to pose these questions where I'm not going to get annoyed, and I never do. I'm trying to call up our conversation, because I wrote a lot of stuff and I wasn't really feeling super good when I wrote it. Let's see. Anyway, he's been a friend of mine for years, Canadian. So he has good quality questions surrounding politics. Here we go. So he says, I wasn't sure to the words to ask, but I think I got it. And I ask out of curiosity, not out of judgment or ignorance. So in the words of Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. To which I instantly replied with the meme of a bunch of angry birds that said judgment intensifies. He said, okay, so my question, you mentioned that it's basically every American's job to protect the Constitution. If it was perfect, why are there 25 amendments? And if there needed to be 25 amendments before either of us even existed, how do you know it's now perfect? Not sure if that makes sense, but I'm curious how changes to the Constitution would be so bad. But if it needed 25 of them to be what it is now, what do you think? And I responded, America is the largest social experiment in self-governance in the history of the world. And that document was written quite cleverly to impose a dependence on 3 tiers of checks and balances. If the executive offices, one of the 3 tiers, continues to overreach, the people who hired that person, the American electorate, would watch every single leader embody their own personal brand of tyranny. To change that document, you need a proposal from Congress with a 2/3 majority vote to support it in both houses, followed by a ratification property of 3/4, I think, because I'm not sure on that. I think it's 3/4 of the majority of the states in this country. So it's designed to be a pain in the ass to pull off and extremely time consuming in order to make the Constitution more permanent and far less likely to appear like another statutory law. Over the course of our country's time, it has been amended, almost all of which I agree with, for the betterment of our constituents. The 16th Amendment can go fuck itself. But it's a lot like knowing that the rule of law was codified at this country's birth and is the guiding principle that I ally myself to, because if I break the rule of law, I don't have access to all the same rights. Further, I believe in the sanctity and sovereignty of the individual, and I believe in creation in tandem with some evolutionary theory. I don't believe they're in opposition to each other, but it doesn't make sense. If I don't defend this, it's just a piece of paper that becomes pesky and annoying and has no relevance to anyone, and thus should be changed or discarded ad nauseum. This means the rights codified within it are meaningless, and we become something else. But even if it's changed, the majority of the country needs to be on board with the change, and at least for now, I'll have a voice in my support or opposition to the change. The Constitution states what America is and what it entails, and I'm not a fan of people coming up with short-sighted reasons to change it. But it can be changed, it has been changed, and it probably will again. But noodling around with our citizens' fundamental rights is not my favorite thing. It's not perfect, to answer your question, but my vision of perfect would be way different than anybody else's, and that doesn't make me right either. So in that spirit, I'd like it left alone, even if I can agree that it's not perfect. Also, sorry for the text wall.
Well said, sir. That's, yeah.
He was like, oh my God, that makes he's like, that makes total sense. I understand. I need to reread it though. But if it's easily changed and with little prejudice, why would you guys even have it? And if you don't want to live in a nation that's a free for all, I understand. And it was like, yeah, yes. Because I think he's trying to get at why I was like pro Vivek, but also like, and fuck that guy, because he wants to change the Constitution. You know what I mean? So like at this point, because I'm like, where is this coming? But it's an honest question, and I think it was posed in a very honest and not a gotcha kind of way. But it's like, look, dude, if it was amended 25 times, how are you sitting here saying it was perfect and or why isn't it? You know? Yeah.
And although there's plenty to argue about all 25 of the amendments, and people do, and whether or not I agree with all of them or not, I would have to kind of rifle through all of them.
The 16th, by the way, and why I said it could fuck itself is the congressional ability to open taxation on American citizens.
That one can absolutely
go fuck itself. The rest of them, whatever.
Sure.
I'm mostly on board with the rest of them.
So, and there is oftentimes, the first 10 are pretty beautiful. Yeah. And the 25 that have been amended can be argued back and forth.
Yep.
However, the protocols to get to even add any of those are pretty strict, and the bar is extremely high. It takes almost a moving mountains to get it done. Mm-hmm. So that means that the vast majority of the people who moved those mountains were on board with it. But those 25 amendments that are added are due to the course of time. Things develop, technology develops. The country grew to a point where it was not tenable to not create legislative concepts that were based around new groups of people moving in, new types of industry moving in.
I mean, imagine
developments.
imagine the architecture of the cornerstone of our founding documents being subject to change with every political party transition every 4 years. They also
Yeah.
design it to have a maximum 8-year term by a single sitting president, and there's a
Yeah.
dominant two-party system. Like, that would be chaos. That would be
Yeah.
absolute chaos. Yeah. So,
So-
it was written quite cleverly, but trying to
there's
articulate that in less words was difficult for me to be like, yeah, because this and that.
And there's-
blah."
There's actually, I mean, and we've talked about it many times here, and I don't agree with it, and I don't believe that you do either. There can be a convention of states where
Yeah.
we can actually, and that's how it's done.
Mhm.
And people are talking about doing that. There's a lot of activity of people trying to do that again. I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't think it can happen. But even if it could, I wouldn't be for it, because we need to adhere more to what the Constitution says, not try to
Yeah.
switch it around. The only thing that that I think you and I agree on, that I would be comfortable with, would be term limits.
Yeah.
But outside of that, and a excising of the 16th Amendment that we just discussed. But outside of that, I don't think if we bring in a convention of states, we're going to get more freedoms out of it. We're going to get less.
Yep.
So I'm cool with it as it is right now. We don't need to change anything until we start actually adhering to primarily the first 10. Anything after that, we can work on too. But let's make sure that we're actually adhering to the documents, which currently our system in America is in such dire straits, is because we're not adhering to that document strongly enough, and we're fighting for every inch to make sure that our governmental system, whether it be federally or even on the states level, are actually doing and abiding by their oath to that document. And so, everyone's like, well, no one's doing it. And we're like, well, that's the point. We have to make them do it. Either put people in there that are going to actually adhere to this document that we all strive to live towards, or what we do is we get rid of those people, put new people in, or we force them to, and that's the ugly truth of it. But that's the beauty of the United States. We have the right and the ability to do that.
Yeah, and
so-
it's one of those things where my favorite argument to those that are like, yeah, but the Constitution was written by a bunch of dudes in powder wigs and with quill pens, and they couldn't fathom, the splitting of the atom. They couldn't fathom the grenade launcher. I'm sure we could all get behind that, right? It's like, imagine, my argument would be, if they didn't write it so cleverly, where all of this fuckery gets mired in these local statutes and just gets spun around the political turntables. Imagine if they didn't, and that became our federal reality.
Yeah. No.
Like, I think they
that
had
they were-
quite a bit of foresight on how bad things could get fucked up, and they still didn't have enough, because things
The
are
First
still out of
Amendment-
control.
The First Amendment was so perfectly written that it allowed for technological advancements such as the internet and things that we're talking on right now to be a part of what that free speech meant. Same thing with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment being that at the time they had weapons of warfare. You could own a
they
cannon
did.
or a ship, or even man, what is the name? It was a rotating. It wasn't a Gatling gun, but there was a Kepler gun or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it was
The old
it
hand
was
crank one
a-
where each of the barrels would
Yeah.
turn and yeah.
absolutely. So they had high repeating weapons. And every citizen was allowed to own anything that the military was allowed to own. So they absolutely encompass the idea of technological advancements that they couldn't possibly foresee, because they knew, especially like Thomas Jefferson, he was so fascinated with the wonderments in France when he was over in France of all the technological advancements. And you want to tell me people like Benjamin Franklin didn't foresee the advancement? The man was a pioneer in the electrical fields.
Well,
The
that's
man, so you tell me these guys were just so primitive that they thought we weren't going to advance any further, even though in their entire lifetimes, not only were they witnessing massive development and advancement in technology, but were a part of it. They were a part of pushing forth those. And yeah, so
that's
like,
what
the
frustrates
future's
me about things like the ATF's Class 3 weapons ban and different tax stamp type of stuff. It's like, look, the spirit of the Second Amendment, the spirit of it was so that we could stay up to date with our government should they become tyrannical.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
us getting the 10 round magazine capped 9mm only, where you have to literally in California fill out a 4473 federal FBI NICS background check to buy ammo. Bullshit. So yeah, I don't like when we're outclassed by our own military and stuff. Do I think everyone should have a Stinger missile in their basement? Probably not. That's kind of a hazard to yourself and your neighbors. Do you have the right to have what the government has? Yeah, you do. I mean, I might personally think it's a dumb fucking idea, but I still advocate for the rights of it. I don't like the fact that I'm going to be outclassed, outgunned, out-calibered, out everything because they're chipping away at our Second Amendment. And it's the spirit of the Second Amendment was in place to prevent you from doing shit like that. So that's how they win. It's a game of inches, So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but
that was a really good question though.
It was an awesome question. That. And some of my buddies can get directly to me to ask that. And there's a sensible level of trust. Like, I can ask you this because you're not going to read party talking points or tear my fucking head off. And I won't. Because I even said, look, my idea of perfect is not what everyone else's is. So in fairness, I got to live with the shit that I don't like too. But to answer your question, it isn't perfect. But I still think that, our citizenry should defend it at all costs. People in positions of defense, like the military and our police, they swear an oath to that same Constitution. So it's a great question. And please ask more of them,
Yeah, absolutely. But that document alone, in and of itself, that document alone has been the beacon on the hill that has drawn every country for the last 250 years. People have been drawn here.
Yeah,
want to come here from everywhere on the planet because of that document. That document provides a more than just a piece of paper. That provides the freedom and the ability to pursue things that they couldn't in other places in the world.
That's right.
If it wasn't for that document, we would not have all of the people who have come from, for years and years and years. It's such a beautiful, beautiful document that drives the world to look at the United States. And when it's not doing its best, they're mad at us. But when it's doing its best, everybody wants to emulate it. And it is unique in history for that document, this country, the experiment that it is, for it to be untouchable in history. And I am very, very proud to have been born here. I'm very proud to serve this country in any way that I can. I love my country, and I'm saddened by where we are at today politically. I'm saddened by what we're doing with the country that the experiment has been taken to a sideways direction, and I'm not happy about that. But overall, the premise, the foundation of it, and the building up of that premise and foundation of what it was intended to be is still true. It's still true, and I love it. And so, but yeah, great question. And man, bring more of those questions. I like those.
Yeah, definitely do. And I wasn't going to call him out or anything, but thank you. He's my buddy. I love him to death. But yeah, it's, the easy answer to that question is because without that cornerstone document, we become something else. And we're just like everybody else. And then, there's no sovereignty anymore to being an American citizen, in my opinion. So anyway, I thought, let's break that down on why it's hard to fuck up. So anyway, that was, those were my hitters. So you watched On to lighter things.
Yeah.
You watched
Yeah.
a movie that you're going to review. I
did.
watched all three. Here's a quick review. I watched all three of the Expendables. It's still
Nice.
just popcorn trash movie.
Love it though.
I was not feeling good this weekend, so I just watched 3 in a row. I'm like, yeah, keep coming. I love the cameos from all the 80s action stars in it. And like Van Damme
Yeah.
shows up and Chuck Norris shows up. Fuck yeah. But anyway, no point to that movie.
I have been I was a big fan, and I've been trying to avoid all of the scary movies because that's what I do for the month of October, right? And it's a little
That's
early,
right.
but man, all the new stuff coming out on the streaming services are almost primarily all like horror stuff.
Oh, 'tis the
I've been
season.
trying to avoid it, but I finally buckled and watched one because I'd just been kind of waiting for it. And I was a big fan of the first Quiet Place movie, which was a John Krasinski film that he starred in, directed, and his wife Emily Blunt was in. And I was a big fan of it. Sure, there was plot holes and stuff that everyone could point out, but I enjoyed the pace of it. I enjoyed the intensity of it. I enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was unique. I thought it was really cool. The second one was actually not too bad either. It wasn't as good as the first one, but I really did actually enjoy the sequel as well. The third one the third installment in this came out this year in June, and it was A Quiet Place Day One, and it was basically set in New York City. And when the entire incident happens, which if you haven't seen the movies, it's an alien invasion where the aliens are monstrous beings that hunt primarily from even the slightest sound. So everyone has to be quiet. You can't make any racket. They attack anything that makes a sound. It's never explained why they're there. It's never explained what their purpose is or anything, and that's fine. That leaves more to the mystery of it. However, this film I was really looking forward to, just to kind of see an origin story and see if they did it right. And it was okay.
So was Krasinski and them behind this one too? Or was
No,
this
I think
they optioned it to somebody else?
Yeah, so
Got it.
it had a decent cast. I mean, I didn't dislike anybody. The main character's name is Sam, and it's played by Lupita Nyong, and she's in all sorts of things. I think she was in all the Wakanda films and stuff, and
okay.
She's fantastic. Joseph Quinn plays Eric, and he played Eddie Munson in the metalhead kid from what's the Stranger Things series.
I haven't seen that.
And then briefly we got Jimon Hansu, who's the black guy that's in everything, the African guy.
Yeah, I love him.
Like, yeah, he's great, but he wasn't in it enough for me to care. Like, he had a couple of brief scenes and that was it. But overall, the movie was more, and I think they intentionally did this. There was only one real good kind of death scene, if like what you're kind of looking for with a monster film.
Only one scene where you could basically taste the brain matter. It was so gross. This is why I don't watch that stuff.
I know. So, but there was only one and it was kind of weak too. He just gets launched off the screen. You don't really see anything happen. But and that's not really the premise of these movies anyway. They're not gory. Most everybody who dies off screen, or gets like jumped at and swept off screen real fast. So that's not really what I was looking for. However, the story is based around a woman who is going through cancer treatment, and it doesn't look good for her. And she's all she wants to do is go to the city in the cancer group house that she's living in, hospice house of some kind, and the nurse has offered to take them all to the city to go to see a show. And she goes, if I go, I want to get pizza. I'm dying for pizza. I want to get pizza. So they go to the city, and then all hell breaks loose while they're in the show. And she realizes that, everyone is trying to survive, but she's already on her way out.
Mhm.
So she's going to stick around and try to find some pizza very quietly. And she runs into this other guy who is terrified. He's from out of town, but he's going to school there. And he finds strength in her. And there's her cat. She carries her cat everywhere. And somehow this magic cat keeps finding her throughout all the chaos and rubble. It just keeps
as
popping
cats
back
do,
up.
right?
Right, yeah. So
Slight eye roll.
yeah. And it was okay. Like, it was more about her kind of personal journey through cancer in the middle of like alien invasion crisis.
Yeah.
And kind of a sorrowful story of her kind of acceptance of her fate,
Mhm.
rather than a like a survival story. But if you look back on the other two, especially the first one, it kind of did the same thing. It just didn't feel like so in your face, and they gave you more other substance, where this one didn't give you as much substance. It just gave you this kind of side story, and the aliens were kind of distantly in the background of this scenario, where they're acting a lot without talking. They're all basically, the whole movie is just them making facial expressions at each other, and very well, don't get me wrong, but it just left something to be desired. It was just kind of boring, and I found it to be boring. And so I don't know, if you're a fan of the genre, if you want to continue on with the series, I guess it's a fine watch, but I would say like 6 megs. Like, it's
That's generous.
nothing to write home about. But it was a solid mediocre film.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm sorry to
but
hear that,
was-
especially since the last few pods you've been in the 7,
In the
8,
hot
9
zone.
meg range, dude. Your megs have been
Yeah.
high.
I know.
Got some
Yeah, this
altitude
is-
on those megs.
This was a mediocre movie, a 6.
Yeah.
But coming up, I'll probably have 1 or 2 more prior to October, and then I'll tell you all about all the scary stuff that you'll never watch.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
I can't wait. The listeners can't wait. It's going to be amazing. I know
Yeah.
you have a dinner guest coming shortly, so I'll
do.
tie this off with maybe some gospel by Gen Z. What do you say?
That sounds great after the discussion we've had tonight.
Love
Sounds
it.
like we need it.
Chapter 23, folks. It's Unforgiving Servant. Here we go. Peter asked Jesus, "How often must I let it slide when my bruv is acting up?" But Holy Bro said, "Nah, fam, in this matter, the math must not be mathin', but you must use girl math." Then he told a parable saying, "The kingdom of the top G is like student loans. One man owed a clean $7 billion. When he couldn't pay it back, the bank repoed his stuff. But he said, 'Hear me out. My degree is useless.' So the bank owner had pity and forgave his debt. Later, he came across this bro who owed him $14,000, and he said, 'Pay it all back right now.' But Blood was the manager at the same Taco Bell as himself, and defo couldn't afford 14 stacks. So the first bro started throwing hands with the second. For that day, he woke up and chose violence. Now, the bank's owner was there and saw the whole thing because he had been waiting for one of them to take his order. So he said, 'Nah, you're doing the most and for no reason, for I was chill with him, yet he switched up so fast with his bro.' But then the banker had all Blood's things repoed. Blood cries in entitled, 'Sacred Blood, what's up? For all those who are not found chill like that with your bruv.'" And that's it. That's the Unforgiving Servant.
I don't even know if I followed that one.
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
I love that the bank owner was there and saw the whole thing because he'd been waiting for one of them to take his order. It's a good time.
Yeah.
We can look forward to next week. You're probably going to read it. I think you'll be in person. It's called Two
I will
Paths.
be in person.
It's going to be fantastic. We've got some stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about preparedness, readiness.
Yes.
We're going to go over some of my favorite things, and we'll have a lot more to talk about then. But for now, I think we'll cut it a little short. I know we had a couple more stories to cover, but I'm not feeling good, to be honest with you. I'm barely hanging on. And I know you got dinner guests coming up, so we will call it here. What do you think?
That sounds good to me, man. Yeah,
Groovy.
I need you to feel better because I'm going to be flying into town on Monday.
I'm on the tail end of it. I started feeling bad Friday, and the weekend was just a nightmare, and it was all congestion and sleepiness. Now it's mostly just fatigue, but the truth is there's a lot of California wildfires going on. And when we don't have any wind, that shit pockets bad. And it was like, you ever light a campfire and you see like the billowy white smoke that starts to actually go down and kind of rest over the top of the earth and like just kind of billows and sits? That's what was happening in our streets in the block. And it was like super bad because all the, like, I think the San Bernardino Mountains are on fire right now. It's like 4 or 5 hours drive from here. So it was pretty bad for like 2 straight days, and then it got better, and I just did not. So I'm on the upswing. Hopefully I'll be better.
What's the temperature like down there right now?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's like 78 degrees. It's 83 right now. It was like 78 all day.
Okay, because we've been in the upper 60s, low 70s. So
we're still hitting the 80s. I think we kissed 90 degrees yesterday, but we're like coming back down to earth from that super 100+ week after week after week heat. So just the season. Right. It's mid-September. October is going to be nice, and then we'll get into some chilly nights, November, December. But we're where we need to be. So cool. All right. Well, we will call it here. We will see you guys probably live next week, God willing.
Yeah.
Have an awesome night. We'll talk to you guys soon.